Jamal Wright was 34 years old when he opened his mailbox and found the wedding invitation that would change everything. For 18 months, he'd lived quietly as a fifth-grade teacher in Philadelphia, driving his old Honda, shopping at thrift stores, letting his ex-fiancée Brittany believe she'd escaped a life of mediocrity when she left him for a wealthy surgeon. The invitation was ornate, expensive, but it was the handwritten note that made his hands shake. "Jamal, I wanted you to see what my life has become. I know this might be hard for you, poor thing, but maybe it will inspire you to finally make something of yourself." She had no idea he was worth $18 million. Had no idea the struggling teacher she'd mocked owned the educational software company that made him a fortune. 2 hours before her vineyard ceremony in Napa Valley, Jamal's private jet touched down on the tarmac. As his Rolls-Royce pulled up to the estate entrance and he stepped out in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, Brittany's face went white. What happened next would destroy her perfect narrative, expose her calculated betrayal, and prove that the biggest mistake of her life was inviting the man she'd underestimated. But in that moment, watching her champagne glass tremble in her hand, Jamal knew everything was about to change. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of room 502 at Franklin Elementary School in Philadelphia. Jamal Wright moved between clusters of desks, his tall frame bending down to help students with their math problems. The classroom showed signs of creative problem-solving. Cardboard geometry shapes hung from the ceiling, and motivational posters made from recycled materials decorated the walls. "Mr. Wright, I got it!" Madison beamed, holding up her worksheet. "I used the strategy you showed us with the blocks." "That's excellent thinking, Madison." Jamal smiled, his voice warm and encouraging. "Would you like to show the class how you solved it?" As Madison explained her solution to her classmates, Jamal watched with quiet pride. The classroom might lack the newest textbooks or smartboards, but his students were thriving through hands-on learning and genuine engagement. After the final bell rang and his students filed out, Jamal gathered his worn leather messenger bag and headed to the faculty parking lot. His 12-year-old Honda Civic sat between newer vehicles belonging to other teachers. The car's faded blue paint and minor dents didn't bother him. It ran well and served its purpose. During the drive to his modest one-bedroom apartment in West Philadelphia, Jamal's mind drifted to his grandmother, Evelyn. Her words from 7 years ago remained as clear as ever. "Don't let money change who you are. Stay grounded in real work with real people for at least 10 years. He could still picture her weathered face in the hospital bed, her wisdom cutting through the grief of impending loss. Just 2 months after that conversation, he'd sold LearnBridge, his educational software platform, for $18 million. Only his lawyer and financial advisor knew about his wealth, a choice that had shaped every aspect of his life since. Pulling into his apartment complex's parking lot, Jamal nodded to Mrs. Rodriguez, who was struggling with her groceries. He grabbed her bags despite her protests, carrying them up 3 flights of stairs to her unit. "You're too kind, Mr. Wright," she said, "always helping everyone." Inside his own apartment, Jamal changed out of his work clothes into comfortable jeans and a t-shirt from the thrift store. The space was small but tidy, furnished with second-hand pieces chosen with care. On his desk sat a framed photo of his grandmother, Evelyn. His phone buzzed, an email from his financial advisor about another anonymous donation. This time, it was $12,000 for young Tommy Martinez's diabetes treatment. The boy's family had been struggling since his diagnosis, and Jamal had overheard his mother crying in the school office about medical bills. Settling onto his worn couch, Jamal allowed himself a moment of reflection about Brittany Lawson. Their breakup 18 months ago had hurt, not because he still wanted her, but because of what it revealed about her character. "A man without drive," she'd called him, her voice dripping with disappointment. I need someone who can give me the life I deserve. 2 months later, she was dating Dr. Trevor Montgomery, posting photos from exotic vacations and charity galas. Sometimes, usually late at night, Jamal questioned whether hiding his wealth had been the right choice. Was it truly about honoring his grandmother's wishes, or was it about protecting himself from people like Brittany? Maybe both were true. The thought followed him downstairs to check his mailbox. Bills, flyers, and then something different. An ornate cream-colored envelope with gold lettering caught his eye. Inside was an elaborate wedding invitation, but what made his stomach tighten was the handwritten note that fell out. Jamal, I wanted you to see what my life has become. Trevor gives me everything I deserve. I know this might be hard for you, poor thing, but I'd love for you to come celebrate with us. It might inspire you to finally make something of yourself. Bring a date if you can find someone willing. B. The paper was thick, expensive. Her handwriting was as precise and calculated as ever. Jamal stood there in the lobby, the invitation heavy in his hands, letting the familiar feelings of disappointment and frustration wash over him. Not because her words hurt, they didn't anymore, but because she remained exactly who she'd always been, someone who measured life's worth in dollar signs and status symbols. He tucked the invitation back into its envelope, thinking about how tomorrow he'd help his students build solar system models from recycled materials, how he'd probably give Marcus another granola bar because he often came to school hungry, how he'd continue living exactly as his grandmother had taught him, with purpose, integrity, and genuine care for others. The wealth sitting in his accounts didn't define him. The lives he touched in his classroom and community did. That was something Brittany had never understood, and probably never would. That evening, Jamal sat at his small kitchen table, the wedding invitation spread before him under the warm light of his pendant lamp. He read Brittany's note again, each condescending word stirring a mixture of hurt and anger that he hadn't felt since their breakup. Poor thing, he muttered, shaking his head. The casual cruelty of her words felt like a slap. Even after 18 months, she still saw him as someone to be pitied. Or worse, someone to be used as an object lesson in her narrative of trading up in life. Opening his laptop, Jamal began researching Dr. Trevor Montgomery. The surgeon's Instagram feed was a carefully curated display of wealth. Designer watches, luxury cars, vacation photos in exotic locations. Professional photos showed him in an upscale medical office, wearing expensive suits, always perfectly posed. But as Jamal dug deeper, cracks in the facade began to appear. A local business news article mentioned Trevor's practice was facing financial restructuring. Court records revealed 3 pending malpractice lawsuits. The luxury cars in his photos? All leased, according to records Jamal found. The beautiful house Trevor posed in front of? Mortgaged to the hilt, with 2 refinances in the past year. Everything's leveraged, Jamal whispered, piecing it together. It's all for show. The discovery should have made him feel better, but instead, it just deepened his unease. Brittany had left him for another illusion, another carefully constructed image of success. But something about the timing nagged at him. Getting up from the table, Jamal went to his bedroom closet. On the top shelf, behind some old textbooks, sat a box of photos and mementos from his relationship with Brittany. He hadn't looked at them since the breakup, but tonight felt different. As he sorted through the photos, a small leather-bound book fell from between some folders. He recognized it immediately. Brittany's journal. She must have left it behind when she moved out. Jamal had always respected her privacy during their relationship, never reading her personal writings. But now, with her cruel note lying on his kitchen table, he opened the journal. The entries started from their final year together. At first, they were mundane observations about their life, but then the tone changed dramatically. March 15th. Another dinner at Jamal's favorite cheap Italian place. He thinks it's charming. I think it's pathetic. I can't keep living like this. Started going to medical conferences and charity galas on my own. That's where the real men are. Men with ambition, men who can give me what I deserve. Jamal is sweet, but useless. He's my placeholder, until I find someone who can actually afford the life I want. Jamal's hands tightened on the journal. The entry was dated 14 months before their breakup. He kept reading. April 2nd. Met an interesting surgeon at tonight's gala. Trevor Montgomery. He noticed my Hermes scarf. Thank God for credit cards. Need to position myself to run into him again. May 18th. Trevor took the bait. Surgeon? 6 figures. Everything I need. His practice seems successful, and he knows all the right people. Just need to time the exit from Jamal perfectly. Can't seem too cruel. Need to keep the moral high ground. The entries continued, detailing her calculated pursuit of Trevor, her strategic planning of their chance encounters, even her rehearsed breakup speech to Jamal. Every moment he had thought was genuine had been orchestrated. Every tear she'd shed had been planned. June 30th. Lisa is helping me coordinate the Trevor situation. She knows his schedule, where he hangs out. I've started dressing differently when I know I'll see him. Jamal doesn't even notice. He's too busy with his precious students. His dedication to teaching would be admirable if it wasn't so limiting. I deserve more than a life of discount stores and budgeting. The hurt Jamal had felt earlier transformed into something colder, clearer. This wasn't just about Brittany leaving him for someone wealthier. It was about her meticulously plotting his replacement while playing the role of loving fiancé. Every kiss, every "I love you," every shared moment during those final months had been a lie. He closed the journal and looked at the wedding invitation again. Her condescending note now read differently, not just cruel, but deeply ironic. She had orchestrated this entire situation, from their breakup to this invitation, believing she was the one in control of the narrative. Jamal reached for his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in months. Andre Patterson, his college roommate who was now a successful entertainment attorney in L.A. Andre was one of the few people who knew about his wealth, who had questioned his choice to live so modestly. Taking a deep breath, Jamal pressed call. After 2 rings, Andre's familiar voice answered. "My man. Long time no talk." "It's time," Jamal said quietly. "I need your help with something." Jamal stepped out of his Honda Civic into the crisp morning air of downtown Philadelphia. The towering glass office building reflected the early sunlight as he straightened his simple blue tie. Despite what he was about to do, he kept his usual modest appearance, khakis and a button-down shirt from Target. Inside the sleek conference room, his financial advisor Sarah Chen and attorney Michael Brooks were already waiting. Sarah had managed his millions since the LearnBridge sale, while Michael had handled the original software company acquisition. "It's time," Jamal said, settling into a leather chair. "The 10 years are almost up anyway. Let's make some moves." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? We've worked hard to keep your wealth private all these years. I'm sure." Jamal placed Brittany's wedding invitation on the glass table. "I need to start living authentically." Michael adjusted his glasses, reviewing the invitation. "What exactly did you have in mind?" "I want to make strategic moves that will make my wealth more visible, but tastefully. Nothing flashy or desperate." Jamal leaned forward. "I've honored my grandmother's wish to stay grounded. Now I need to honor myself." For the next hour, they mapped out a plan. Sarah would begin shifting some investments into more visible ventures. Michael would handle the paperwork for a private jet rental and coordinate with the Vineyard Estate in Napa Valley. During a coffee break, Jamal stepped out to call Andre. His old college roommate picked up on the first ring. "Jamal, what's up, man? Haven't heard from you in a minute." "Andre, I need your help with something. Remember that software company I sold? The one that made you rich while you've been playing humble teacher?" "Yeah. What about it?" Jamal explained about Brittany's wedding invitation and his plan. Andre's entertainment industry connections could help understand exactly what narrative was circulating. "Oh, man," Andre said, his voice turning serious. "Actually, I heard something about this through mutual friends. You're not gonna like it. Tell me." "Brittany's been spreading this story everywhere. Says you fell apart after she left. That you've been desperately texting her, begging her to come back. She's telling everyone she invited you to the wedding out of pity, to help you find closure." Andre paused. "She's positioned herself as this benevolent ex who's trying to help her struggling former fiancé move on." Jamal's jaw tightened. "And people believe this? It's spread through your entire social circle, man. She's got everyone thinking you're this sad, broken guy she had to leave behind for her own good." "Perfect," Jamal said quietly. "That makes this even better." Back in the conference room, Jamal finalized the arrangements. He would RSVP yes with a +1. The private jet would land 2 hours before the ceremony. A Rolls-Royce would pick them up from the airport. "Book the presidential suite at the Vineyard Estate," he told Sarah. "I heard through Andre that Brittany tried to get it, but couldn't afford it." "Already done," Sarah replied with a small smile. "The confirmation came through while you were on the phone." Jamal pulled out his phone and called Kendra James. They'd been friends for years, long before she launched her successful fashion design business. She answered with her usual warm enthusiasm. "Jamal! How's my favorite teacher? How'd you like to help me crash a wedding?" "Well, not crash exactly. I was invited, but I need someone who understands both style and strategy." Kendra listened as he explained the situation. Her delighted laughter filled the line. "Oh, this is going to be good. Count me in. I'll design something perfect for both of us." Over the next hour, they coordinated every detail. The jet would land at precisely the right time. The Rolls-Royce would make its entrance when guests were gathering for pre-ceremony cocktails. Everything would be elegant, tasteful, and impossible to ignore. 1 week before the wedding, Jamal sat in his modest apartment, looking at the final confirmation email for the private jet service. The schedule was set. Wheels up from Philadelphia at 8 a.m., landing in Napa Valley at exactly the right moment. He picked up the framed photo of his grandmother that sat on his desk. Her warm smile had always given him strength. "I kept my promise, Grandma," he said softly, touching the glass. "Now I get to be fully myself." The autumn sun cast golden rays across the Napa Valley Vineyard's manicured grounds. Crystal glasses clinked as servers weaved through clusters of well-dressed guests, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres during the pre-ceremony cocktail hour. The air carried the sweet scent of roses mixed with the earthy aroma of aged wine barrels. Brittany Lawson, radiant in her pre-wedding white cocktail dress, held court near the stone fountain. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light with every animated gesture as she chatted with a group of admirers. "Everything is just perfect," she gushed, taking another sip of champagne. "Trevor and I wanted an intimate celebration, with just our closest 300 friends." She laughed musically, touching the arm of an older woman in Chanel. "Oh!" Brittany's eyes widened with practiced concern. "My poor ex is coming today. Jamal, the teacher I used to date, I hope he's doing okay. He took our breakup so hard." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "I invited him to show there are no hard feelings. Maybe seeing all this will inspire him to finally do something with his life." The guests nodded sympathetically, completely bought into her narrative of benevolent ex-fiancé. Brittany basked in their approval, adjusting her perfectly styled hair. A murmur rippled through the crowd as several guests checked their phones. "Did you hear about the private jet that just landed?" someone whispered. "Must be one of Trevor's doctor friends." "No, I heard it was someone from Silicon Valley," another guest responded. Brittany waved away the gossip with a manicured hand. "As long as they're not late for my ceremony. Everything is timed perfectly." She turned back to describing the hand-painted Italian tiles in the vineyard's bridal suite. The sound of tires on gravel drew everyone's attention to the estate's circular drive. A gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the entrance, its polished surface reflecting the surrounding topiaries and rose gardens. The driver, in crisp black livery, opened the rear door with practiced precision. A tall, handsome man in an impeccably tailored Tom Ford tuxedo stepped out, a Rolex Daytona glinting on his wrist. He turned to offer his hand to his companion, a stunning woman in a breathtaking designer gown that seemed to float around her. Gasps rippled through the crowd as recognition dawned. "Is that Jamal?" someone whispered loudly. Brittany's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Her face cycled through expressions: confusion as she spotted the luxury car, disbelief as she recognized her ex-fiancé, and finally, horror as she processed his transformed appearance. Trevor appeared at her side, his bow tie slightly crooked. "Who is that?" he asked, frowning at the commotion. That's Jamal," Brittany barely whispered, her voice trembling like the champagne in her unsteady hand. Marcus, who had attended college with both Jamal and Brittany, broke away from the crowd and approached the new arrivals. "Man, is that your jet on the tarmac?" Jamal smiled warmly, his calm confidence filling the space around him. "It is. Hope we're not late." The cocktail hour's carefully orchestrated mingling dissolved as guests gravitated toward Jamal and his stunning companion. Questions flew from all directions. "What do you do now? When did this happen? Are you still teaching?" Jamal answered each question with genuine humility, his hand resting lightly on Kendra's back. "I developed some educational software years ago," he explained, "but I've kept teaching because I love it, not because I had to. My grandmother always taught me that what you do matters more than what you have." Each response landed like a quiet rebuke to Brittany's values, though he never mentioned her name. His genuine warmth drew people in, creating an orbit of attention that pulled guests away from the bride's carefully curated spotlight. "The LearnBridge platform? That was you?" a guest asked incredulously. "My kid's school uses that." "We try to keep it affordable for schools," Jamal replied modestly. "Education should be about opportunity, not profit margins." Across the courtyard, Brittany stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling visibly now. She watched as her wedding guests clustered around her poor ex, their backs turned to her. Every carefully constructed narrative she'd built, about Jamal's lack of ambition, about his supposed depression after their breakup, about her magnanimous pity invitation, crumbled in the face of his quiet success. Her perfect wedding day narrative had collapsed before the ceremony even began. Lisa hovered at the edge of the cocktail hour, fidgeting with her champagne glass. Her maid of honor dress, a soft blush silk that Brittany had chosen, suddenly felt too tight. When she finally caught Jamal's eye, she gestured subtly toward a quiet corner of the vineyard, where gnarled old vines created a private alcove. Jamal excused himself from the group of admiring guests and followed her, his movements unhurried and confident. The afternoon sun filtered through the grape leaves, creating dappled shadows on his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "I need to tell you something," Lisa said, her voice trembling slightly. She'd been rehearsing this conversation in her head since Jamal's dramatic arrival. "I'm so sorry, Jamal. I helped Brittany plan everything with Trevor." Jamal remained silent, his expression neutral but attentive. Lisa rushed to continue, the words tumbling out like water from a broken dam. "She made me help her track his schedule, when he'd be at certain medical conferences, which charity galas he attended, even his favorite restaurants and golf clubs." Lisa's hands shook as she spoke. She pursued him like it was a military campaign. Nothing was accidental. Those chance meetings? All planned. Every single one. "I see," Jamal said quietly, his calm demeanor making Lisa feel even more guilty. "Last week, when she was addressing your invitation, Lisa swallowed hard. She called it her power move. She literally said, "I want Jamal to watch me marry money and realize what he lost." Those were her exact words. Jamal's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. "Go on. There's more," Lisa continued, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "She's been telling Trevor that you're obsessed with her, that you've been constantly texting her, trying to get her back. She's painted this picture of you as this desperate ex who can't let go." Without a word, Jamal pulled out his phone and opened his message history. He handed it to Lisa, who scrolled through, her eyes widening. There wasn't a single message to Brittany in the last 18 months. "Oh, God," Lisa whispered, handing the phone back. "I knew she was lying, but seeing it, I'm so sorry, Jamal. I should have said something sooner. If you need anything, if you want me to tell people the truth." "Thank you, Lisa," Jamal said genuinely. "But the truth has a way of revealing itself." Across the courtyard, Jamal spotted Mr. and Mrs. Lawson standing somewhat apart from the crowd. He remembered Sunday dinners at their house, Mr. Lawson's dad jokes, Mrs. Lawson's warm hugs. They had always treated him like family. He made his way over to them, noting how Mrs. Lawson's eyes welled up at his approach. "Jamal," she said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. "You look wonderful." "We've missed you, son," Mr. Lawson added, his voice gruff with emotion. "I've missed you both, too," Jamal replied sincerely. Mrs. Lawson wiped at her eyes carefully. "We never understood why she left you. We tried to talk to her, but she said you weren't ambitious enough, that you'd never—" She trailed off, embarrassed. "I heard you've done very well," Mr. Lawson said. "The jet, the car." Jamal nodded, choosing his words carefully. "I've been blessed professionally, but I chose to stay in teaching because it matters to me. I've been funding educational initiatives and scholarships anonymously. It's important work." Mr. Lawson's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You had money the whole time? Even when you were with Brittany?" "Yes," Jamal confirmed quietly. "I believe in people loving me for who I am, not what I have." Mrs. Lawson pressed her hand to her mouth, the full weight of her daughter's shallow choices hitting her. Before she could respond, a flash of white appeared in their peripheral vision. Brittany rushed toward them, her wedding dress rustling, anxiety clear beneath her forced smile. She grabbed Jamal's arm with more force than necessary. "Jamal!" she said too loudly, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "Let's catch up privately." Brittany's manicured nails dug into Jamal's arm as she practically dragged him toward a private stone terrace. Cascading vines draped over the railing, offering a picturesque view of the sun-drenched vineyard below. The moment they were out of earshot from the other guests, her smile vanished like morning dew under harsh sunlight. "What the hell are you doing here dressed like that?" she hissed, her perfectly made-up face contorting with anger. "Where did you get this money? Did you rent everything just to embarrass me?" Jamal stood relaxed, hands in his pockets, maintaining the same calm demeanor he used when handling difficult parent conferences at school. "You invited me, remember?" he said softly. "I came to celebrate your happiness. Don't give me that." Brittany's voice cracked as she struggled to keep her volume down. "You had money this whole time? All those years I complained about your Honda, your tiny apartment, shopping at thrift stores?" She paced the terrace, her white dress swishing against the stone floor. "You made me look like a fool. I left you because I thought you were going nowhere." "No," Jamal replied, his voice steady but firm. "You left me because you judged me by what was in my wallet, not what was in my heart. I'm the same man I always was, the same teacher, the same person who loved you despite your constant dissatisfaction." Brittany's hands trembled as she gripped the stone railing. "Does Trevor know? Are you going to tell people?" Her eyes darted toward the cocktail hour where guests were still buzzing about Jamal's arrival. "This is my wedding day, Jamal." "I'm not here to ruin anything," he said, maintaining eye contact. "I'm here because you invited me. You wanted me to see your life. Well, I'm seeing it. You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she accused, her voice bitter. "Showing up in your fancy jet, that ridiculous car, that watch that probably costs more than my first year's salary." "I'm not enjoying your discomfort, Brittany," Jamal interrupted gently. "I'm just existing as myself. The only difference is now you can see what was always there." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "You could have told me. We could have had all of this together." "Could we?" Jamal asked, raising an eyebrow. "Would it have been real? Or would you have just loved what I could give you?" Brittany opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For the first time, genuine uncertainty crossed her face, as she realized she couldn't control this narrative. The story she'd carefully crafted about her poor ex had shattered, and there was no way to piece it back together. They returned to the reception separately. Brittany rejoined Trevor at the head table, plastering on her camera-ready smile. Jamal took his assigned seat for dinner, finding himself next to one of Trevor's colleagues, Dr. Peterson, who was already several glasses deep into the wedding wine. "Hell of an entrance," Dr. Peterson said, loosening his bow tie. "You know, Trevor's been talking about this wedding for months. Needed it to be perfect." He took another long sip of wine. "Of course, that was before the lawsuit." Jamal carefully cut his steak. "Lawsuit?" "Malpractice," Dr. Peterson continued, his words slightly slurred. "Bad knee replacement. Patients claiming nerve damage. Between you and me, Trevor's practice is hanging by a thread. Banks breathing down his neck. Credit cards maxed out." He leaned in conspiratorially. "All this?" He gestured at the elaborate reception. "Smoke and mirrors, my friend. The cars, the clothes, the country club membership. It's all leverage to the hilt." The surgeon topped off his wine glass, spilling a few drops on the white tablecloth. "That's why he needed someone like Brittany. Told us he found the perfect woman. Beautiful, makes good money, and doesn't ask too many questions about finances." Dr. Peterson chuckled darkly. "He needs her more than she knows." Jamal absorbed this information silently, watching Brittany and Trevor at the head table. They were both smiling, both playing their parts perfectly. Two people using each other, each thinking they were the one in control. "More wine?" Dr. Peterson offered, already reaching for the bottle. "No, thank you," Jamal replied, his mind piecing together the full picture of their relationship, a house of cards built on mutual deception. At a nearby table, Andre Patterson swirled his wine glass, his voice carrying just enough to catch the attention of surrounding guests. "You know, I've known about Jamal's success for years," he mentioned casually to the group. "But that's not what makes him remarkable." A woman in a navy cocktail dress leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Well," Andre continued, setting down his glass, "while everyone thought he was just getting by on a teacher's salary, he was quietly changing lives. Last winter, he found out one of his students needed emergency surgery. Family couldn't afford it." Andre paused, letting the information sink in. "Next thing you know, the hospital received an anonymous donation covering every penny." The guests exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to amazement. "That's not all," Andre went on, his voice warm with pride for his friend. "He's funded entire classroom renovations, supplied technology for underfunded schools, created scholarship programs. He's given away more than most people make in a lifetime." He smiled, adding, "And he never wanted credit, just wanted to help." Like ripples in a pond, the information spread from table to table. Whispers turned to open discussion. Guests who had earlier heard Brittany's dismissive comments about her poor ex now viewed those words through a different lens. "Can you believe she called him poor thing in that invitation?" one guest muttered to another. And all this time, he was secretly funding charitable causes while she was chasing status, another replied, shaking her head. At the bar, Trevor Montgomery swayed slightly, his sixth glass of champagne making his movements unsteady. His eyes locked onto Brittany, who was trying to maintain conversation with her bridesmaids while clearly aware of the shifting atmosphere in the room. Trevor stumbled over to her, his face flushed. "Did you know?" he demanded, grabbing her elbow. "Trevor, you're drunk," Brittany hissed, trying to pull away. "Not now." "Did you know he had money?" Trevor pressed, his voice rising. "Is that why you invited him? Are you still in love with him?" Heads turned toward their increasingly visible confrontation. Brittany plastered on a smile, but her eyes flashed with panic. "You're being ridiculous. Let's discuss this later." "Later?" Trevor laughed bitterly. "Like how you'll later explain why you never mentioned dating a millionaire." The wedding coordinator nervously approached, suggesting it was time for toasts. Brittany practically pushed Trevor toward his seat, desperate to maintain some semblance of normalcy. As planned speakers delivered their rehearsed messages, Brittany's brother David stood up, champagne in hand. He glanced at his prepared notes, then set them aside. "I had a whole speech written," he began, "but I need to say something else. Something about the kind of person Jamal Wright is." He looked directly at his former would-be brother-in-law. "What most people don't know is that 3 years ago, our mom got sick. Really sick. The medication she needed wasn't covered by insurance, and we were struggling to figure it out." Brittany's smile froze on her face. She hadn't heard this story. "Then, suddenly," David continued, his voice thick with emotion, "the pharmacy called. Said an anonymous donor had paid for a year's worth of medication. We never knew who it was." He turned to Jamal. "Until today, when I finally connected the dots. The timing, the way you asked about Mom's health afterward." The room fell silent. All eyes moved between Jamal, who sat quietly with his usual calm demeanor, and Brittany, who looked like she'd been struck. "You helped save our mother," David said firmly, "and you never said a word. Never asked for recognition. Never used it to—" He glanced at his sister. "Prove anything to anyone." Glasses raised throughout the room. "To Jamal," someone called out. The toast spread, voices joining in appreciation for the quiet teacher who had touched so many lives without seeking praise. At the head table, Brittany sat motionless, her champagne untouched. Beside her, Trevor stared at his new wife with dawning comprehension, seeing for the first time how little he truly knew about her, and about the man she'd deemed not good enough. Between them, the elaborate wedding cake stood on its display, its white fondant gleaming under the reception light. Like everything else about this wedding, it was chosen to impress, to project an image. And like everything else about this day, it remained untouched as the carefully constructed facade crumbled around it. Sunlight streamed through the presidential suite's windows as Jamal packed his overnight bag. Kendra emerged from the bathroom, wrapping a silk scarf around her hair. Their quiet morning routine was interrupted by frantic knocking at the door. "Jamal! I know you're in there!" Brittany's voice cracked with desperation. Kendra raised an eyebrow. "Want me to handle this?" "No, it's okay." Jamal squeezed her hand. "I'll deal with it." When he opened the door, Brittany nearly fell forward. Her wedding makeup was smeared, mascara trails staining her cheeks. Her designer dress from the night before was wrinkled, suggesting she hadn't changed or slept. "You—" She stumbled into the room, pointing an accusatory finger. "You destroyed everything!" "Good morning to you too, Brittany." Jamal's voice remained steady. "Don't patronize me!" She paced frantically. "My wedding day. My perfect day. And everyone was talking about you instead of celebrating me. Trevor and I fought all night because of you." Jamal leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. "I attended your wedding as an invited guest. Nothing more." "In a private jet?" With a Rolls-Royce? Her laugh was bitter, hysteric. You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me. No, Brittany. I simply arrived as myself. Everything that happened after came from choices you made long before I got here. She ran her hands through her disheveled hair, switching tactics. Tears welled up in her eyes. Do you know how hard this is for me? Finding out that everything I thought I knew was a lie? You mean like finding out someone you loved was using you as a placeholder? The words hit their mark. Brittany's expression shifted, her voice softening. She moved closer to Jamal. We could have had all of this together. The lifestyle, the status, everything I wanted. She reached for his arm. Why didn't you tell me about the money? Jamal stepped back, maintaining distance. Because I needed to know you loved me, not what I could buy you, and you showed me exactly who you were. That's not fair. I didn't know. That's exactly my point. Jamal walked to his suitcase and pulled out a familiar leather-bound notebook. But I know everything now. Brittany's face drained of color. My journal. Found it months ago in that box you left behind. Every calculated move, every strategy session. He opened to a marked page. Should I read your words back to you? Don't. Jamal is sweet, but useless. He's my placeholder until I find someone who can actually afford the life I want. He closed the journal. You planned to leave me all along. You hunted Trevor like a target. Brittany sank into a nearby chair, her facade crumbling completely. Are you going to tell him? Are you going to show him the journal? Her voice quivered. Are you going to ruin my marriage? Kendra, who had been quietly observing, shook her head in disbelief at Brittany's continued self-absorption. Your marriage will succeed or fail based on the foundation you've built together, Jamal said. That has nothing to do with me. But I hope, for your sake, that you actually love him. Of course I love him. But her voice lacked conviction. Do you? Or do you love what you thought he could give you? Jamal placed the journal on the table between them. Because a life built on what someone has, instead of who they are, isn't a life, Brittany. It's a transaction. She stared at the journal, tears falling freely now. You don't understand. You can't understand what it's like to want more. I understand wanting more perfectly well, Jamal interrupted. I just never confused more with better, and I never sacrificed who I was to get it. The hotel room phone rang. Their car was ready. We need to head out, Kendra said softly, gathering their bags. Brittany stood unsteadily. So, that's it? You show up, blow up my life, and just leave? You blew up your own life, Brittany. I just declined to keep playing the role you assigned me. Jamal picked up his bag. I wish you well. I really do. They walked past her to the door. Brittany grabbed the door frame for support, her knuckles white, as she watched them head toward the elevator. Her carefully constructed world had shattered, leaving her alone in a hallway with mascara-stained cheeks and the weight of her choices pressing down on her shoulders. 2 weeks after the wedding, Jamal sat at his desk grading papers when his phone buzzed. A message from Lisa appeared. You need to see this. He opened the email, his red pen hovering over a student's math worksheet. Everything's falling apart here, Lisa's message began. Trevor found Brittany's journal yesterday. She left it behind in her panic after talking to you. He read everything. All her plans, her calculated pursuit of him, how she researched his schedule and orchestrated their accidental meetings. He's devastated, Jamal. Not just hurt, but humiliated. Jamal set down his pen, leaning back in his chair. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his classroom's empty desks. Trevor's family, their old money, very traditional. They already had doubts about Brittany. Now that they know she basically hunted him like a target, they've pulled their financial support from his practice. They're calling her a social climber and saying she trapped their son. The message continued. But that's not even the worst part. Remember how Brittany always had the newest designer everything? Turns out she's been under investigation at work. The wedding expenses drew attention to her expense reports. She's been inflating charges for years, pocketing the difference to fund her luxury lifestyle. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, Jamal. The company's building a case against her. Criminal charges are possible. Jamal rubbed his temples, remembering all the times Brittany had bragged about her expense account, her casual mentions of business dinners at five-star restaurants. The social fallout is brutal, Lisa wrote. Half the wedding guests have quietly unfriended her on social media. No one's returning her calls. Everyone's talking about how she tried to humiliate her poor ex, who turned out to be this secret millionaire who funds scholarships and helps families in need. The contrast is, well, it's not good for her. His phone buzzed again. Another paragraph appeared. Her parents are taking it especially hard. Your conversation with them at the wedding really hit home. Mrs. Lawson called me crying yesterday. She said they raised her better than this. They're barely speaking to Brittany now. Mr. Lawson said he doesn't recognize the person his daughter became. Jamal stood, walking to his classroom window. Outside, kids played basketball during recess, their laughter floating up to the third floor. She built a house of cards, Lisa's message concluded. And you just stood there being yourself. The wind did the rest. I feel guilty sometimes, being part of her schemes, but watching you handle everything with such grace, it taught me something about dignity. Thank you for that. He stared at his phone for a long moment before opening his messaging app. He typed a final message to Brittany. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I hope more that someday you figure out what that should be. His thumb hovered over the send button before pressing it. Then he blocked her number, deleting their message history. That evening, Andre visited his apartment, bringing takeout from their favorite Thai place. They sat on Jamal's balcony, the city lights twinkling below. You're quiet tonight, Andre observed, reaching for the pad thai. Just thinking. Jamal pushed his food around his plate. Was I wrong to hide the money all those years? Was it really about honoring Grandma Evelyn's wish? Or was I just protecting myself? Andre set down his fork. Why does it have to be one or the other? What do you mean? Look, your grandmother wanted you to stay grounded, to know your worth beyond your bank account. That's real. But after watching your parents' friends change when the money came, after seeing how it affected their relationships, maybe protecting yourself wasn't such a bad instinct. Jamal considered this, remembering how his parents' social circle had transformed after his father's business success, how quickly genuine connections had turned transactional. Both things can be true, Andre continued. You honored your grandmother's wisdom and protected yourself from people who would have valued your wallet more than your character. The question is, what now? Now? Jamal looked out over the city. Yeah, now. The 10 years are almost up. You're not the same person you were at 24. Maybe it's time to think about building relationships on complete honesty from the start. The truth of Andre's words settled over them as they sat in comfortable silence, the city humming below, the future unfolding with new possibilities. 6 months later, a crisp autumn breeze rustled through the colorful leaves as Jamal pulled into the school parking lot in his new Tesla Model 3. The car was a careful choice, environmentally conscious and practical, yet not flashy enough to draw attention. It represented the balance he'd finally found between his wealth and his values. Mrs. Rodriguez, the school secretary, waved as he walked in. Mr. Wright, the new computers for the STEM lab arrived this morning. Perfect timing, Jamal smiled. The kids will be excited to start their coding project. The hallways looked different now. Gone were the worn-out posters and outdated equipment. Through his newly established Evelyn Wright Foundation, named after his grandmother, the school had received funding for technology upgrades, art supplies, and even a small recording studio for the music program. In his classroom, Student projects lined the walls. Not just their work, but their dreams put to paper. A board displayed college acceptance letters from his former students, many of whom had received scholarships through his foundation. He'd finally found a way to merge his two worlds without compromising either. His phone buzzed with a message from Kendra. "Don't forget dinner with the education board tonight. Wearing that blue tie I got you?" Their relationship had evolved naturally after the wedding incident. Weekly coffee meetups turned into long conversations about their shared passion for education and community building. Now, 6 months later, they were partners in every sense. She even helped design the study spaces in his new brownstone in Fairmount. The brownstone had become more than just his home. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, students gathered there for mentoring sessions. The spacious kitchen island became a homework spot. The living room transformed into a discussion space where kids talked about their college dreams and career goals. Between classes, Jamal checked his email and found an invitation to speak at next month's Education Innovation Conference. The topic: Purpose-Driven Success. Building character before building wealth. He'd been sharing his story more openly now, helping others understand that true success came from aligning actions with values. During lunch, he overheard two teachers discussing Brittany. The news had traveled through Philadelphia's professional circles. She'd lost her marketing executive position after the expense fraud investigation. Now she worked at a smaller firm, earning less than half her previous salary. Her carefully curated social media presence had gone quiet. Through mutual friends, Jamal had heard about her life with Trevor. Their marriage had devolved into a cold arrangement, both too proud to admit failure, too financially entangled to separate. They lived in a smaller house now, Trevor's practice struggling after his family withdrew support. They maintained appearances at social events, but everyone saw through the facade. Jamal felt no satisfaction in her downfall. Instead, he felt a quiet gratitude for the lessons his grandmother had taught him about authentic living. After school, he found an elegant cream envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a wedding invitation from Maria Santos, his former student, Tommy's older sister. She'd been one of the first recipients of his anonymous scholarship fund 6 years ago, which had helped her attend nursing school. The invitation included a handwritten note. "Mr. Wright, you changed my life and never asked for credit. Your secret support helped me become a nurse, and now I'm marrying a wonderful pediatrician I met at the hospital. I'd be honored if you'd celebrate with us." Jamal smiled, remembering the quiet way he'd arranged the scholarship through the school's administration back then. Now he could attend the wedding as himself. No secrets, no hidden identity. He drove to the local post office, where his Tesla drew barely a glance. Inside, he filled out the RSVP card, booking a regular commercial flight and making a note to shop for a thoughtful gift at a local store. Some habits of humility were worth keeping. As he dropped the RSVP in the mailbox, he caught his reflection in the window. The same dedicated teacher he'd always been, but now living without the weight of secrets. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "Success isn't about what you have. It's about who you are when you have it." "I kept my promise, Grandma," he whispered to his reflection. "And I stayed me." Standing there, Jamal understood the truth that had guided him all along. Some people spend their lives chasing what they think they deserve. He had learned the secret. Deserve what you chase. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.